what happens to an atom of a group 2 element when it forms a compound with oxygen. And yeah, we need to figure out what will happen to the group 2 element, right? So any group 2 element which I can think of is, for example, magnesium, Mg, right? So primarily or initially every atom in the periodic table is stable, right? Or you can say that the atoms are their electronic structures are not very stable, okay, but they are neutral, right? For example, we got magnesium, right? But magnesium is an atom, it's a neutral atom, but it's not very stable, okay? It's highly reactive when it's open to the atmosphere. So it's highly reactive. Why? Because its electronic structure is not stable, and to make it stable, it forms an ion of itself by losing 2 electrons, because it got 2 extra electrons and it has to lose 2 of them to become more stable and form an ion. Alright, so when magnesium atom loses 2 electrons, it got a charge of +2, right? Because it loses 2 electrons. Yeah, so that is 2 negative. So getting a +2 charge is the magnesium ion. How do we call that? That is magnesium 2+ ion, right? And now this is stabilized. Why? Because it lost 2 electrons and formed a much stable ion. Similarly, oxygen is the case where oxygen itself as an atom is also very highly reactive, but this is not about like losing electrons. Oxygen needs 2 electrons, right? So when oxygen needs 2 electrons, this means it will gain 2 electrons to form an ion of -2 charge, right? Because it gained 2 electrons, and that's how it forms an oxygen ion. So this is oxygen ion with -2 charge, right? So whenever magnesium forms a compound with oxygen, that's an ionic compound, and oxygen gains 2 electrons, it gains 2 electrons, and magnesium loses 2 electrons. Alright, so that's how this ionic bond forms. So let's see which option is correct in our case. So option A says it bonds with 2 atoms of oxygen. No, that's not the case. Alright, because it loses 2 electrons, and those 2 electrons will be transferred to oxygen, and that's how an ionic bond forms between 1 ion of magnesium and 1 ion of oxygen. So this is totally wrong. And option B says it receives 2 electrons from an atom of oxygen. No, magnesium doesn't receive 2 electrons, it actually loses 2 electrons. Option C is it shares 2 electrons with an atom of oxygen. That's another, because it's not covalent bonding, it's ionic bonding, right? In ionic bonding, the metal completely loses 2 electrons to oxygen. Alright, it doesn't share because it's not a covalent bond, it's ionic bond. Similarly, we have part D, it transfers 2 electrons to an atom of oxygen. Yeah, that's true. Alright, that's true.